I predict in the next 5 to 10 years, the role of the residential real estate agent, and even the commercial agent for that matter, is going to drastically evolve. And there will be a revolution in terms of the modality of how a real estate agent actually executes and performs their duties.
Hello and welcome to episode 91 of the Smart Agents Podcast. My name is Michael Walter and I'll be your host. Earlier this year, a home in the town of Gulfport, Florida became the first piece of real estate sold in the US as an NFT. The world of cryptocurrencies and NFT can be a bit confusing, so today we are joined by Josh Rhodes to gain some knowledge on how cryptocurrency works and how it is beginning to enter the real estate industry. Now, before we get on to the day's featured interview, make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents Podcast. You can find the show on all major podcasting platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and now Amazon Music. Also, if you or someone else on your team has an awesome story or real estate tips to share with our community, send us a message at feedback@smartagents.com. We're always on the lookout for new stories to share. All right, let's get on to the day's featured interview with Josh Rhodes. He shared a ton of great insight, and I hope you enjoy it. Basically, the way I like to start everything out is if you could introduce yourself a little bit to us, who you are and where you're at in the country.
Yeah, Josh Rhodes. I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, a little bit of a serial entrepreneur, full-time crypto investor, family man, and grew up here in Alabama, born and raised, played college baseball 100 years ago, and got into nonprofit work actually right after college. And I was miserable for about 8 years because I was really actually just an entrepreneur and a sales guy who needed to be set loose into the free market. And so I did that finally. I had a bridge job in corporate sales, but then I started my own business, and the rest is history. So here I am, though. I discovered crypto in 2017, like most people do, on a FOMO headline. I wish I had a more romantic story than that, but that's just kind of how I got into it. But now it's turning into the sixth emerging asset class, and it's very, very, very productive and fruitful. And I've had a good run with it. So I'm excited to talk more about it with you.
Right. Yeah. And our main audience is, the real estate professionals, the agents, the brokers. I definitely want to talk about how it's kind of evolving in the real estate space, but really just for people that, even myself, there's so much with crypto that I just don't understand. Really, where do you even get kind of started with it?
Well, here's how I would start. Because crypto is a big word, actually, even though it's 5 letters, I guess, maybe 6. I can't count that fast, but it's kind of like when people say, "Hey, tell me about crypto," it's kind of like saying, "Hey, tell me about zoology." It's like there's a lot of animals out there. There's a lot of species. Same with crypto. So here's where I think everyone needs to start. If you're at ground zero, start with Bitcoin. It's the largest market cap crypto. It's the biggest name brand. It's been around the longest in terms of just notoriety. And the thing to understand the most about it is before you start thinking about, is it the replacement for the US dollar, or is it digital gold, or all that stuff? I think the thing that helps me understand it as a country boy from Alabama is Bitcoin it's the largest computer network on the planet. That's kind of 101. It's a decentralized computer network that acts as a digital bank for anyone who wants to access it. And it's incorruptible. It's unhackable. It is totally secure and is governed by a software as opposed to a greedy human or a bureaucratic central government. And once you know that, it's a peer-to-peer network. So you and I can send money or a currency called Bitcoin to each other. And it has to go through like 100 validations and verifications between you and I, but it happens in seconds And you could be in Shanghai and I could be in Alabama, and we could trade currency or goods in a matter of seconds, as opposed to maybe the traditional banking system with its hoops and the SWIFT currency system and international sanctions and all of the different things that could stand between you and I trying to have a peer-to-peer interaction. So I would just start there. Like that's what Bitcoin is. It's and it truly is set apart. Everything else is considered an altcoin. And altcoins, you just need to look at them the same way you look at Microsoft and Apple. They're just software companies. And a lot of them are startups, and some of them have massive market caps. Some of them have multi-billion-dollar market caps. Some of them, like Bitcoin, has almost a $1 trillion market cap. And to give everybody some perspective, gold, the precious metal gold, has a $10 trillion market cap, and it's been around for thousands of years. And the crypto market as a whole, at the time of you and I talking, has about a $1.5 trillion market cap, and it's been around for 13 years or less. So we're dealing with one of the highest adoption curves or adoption rates of any technology in history. And this happens to be a financial technology that honestly could cure a lot of the ailments that we're experiencing right now in our economies, like inflation, et cetera. How's that?
Right. Yeah, no, I think that was great, because it does, like you said, it's a couple letters, but it's a massive topic that there's a lot of different avenues to go, and it's just a big tangled web. I think that there's a lot of people that are just kind of nervous, like just get overwhelmed with it. But through doing this podcast, I have had several people talk about, hey, it's one of those things that I need, as a real estate agent, I really need to kind of understand and start to, wrap my head around, because that is something that, in the future and in the near future is going to become more and more part of our world.
Yeah. And the thing so there's the opportunity to be a crypto slot machine gambler, and there's the opportunity to understand the utility behind it all. So, and I think the underlying technologies that we need to pay attention to, just to throw out a couple of categories for your listeners: blockchain technology, like just know what it is, and cryptography, which is basically the encryption code or technology that allows things to be privatized on a particular network to keep it from being hacked or made known publicly, et cetera. And so those are the two things that are the central utilities. And then from there, all of the innovation comes in and builds on top of it. NFTs, even with real estate, in Florida, for example, the first home to be sold as an NFT was sold in this year, 2022. And we're tokenizing real estate these days. We have an opportunity to do refinancing with tokenization rather than traditional financing and refi. And there's a lot of just burgeoning opportunities there, all possible because of blockchain technology.
Right. So that is really interesting. This whole NFT with how does that work? Right. So like if somebody doesn't understand what NFTs are and all this technology, how does somebody purchase and sell a house via NFT?
Well, I think it's important to know what NFT stands for: non-fungible token, right? And so a token, when I think of tokens, I think of growing up going to Aladdin Castle arcades, and you had to put a quarter in the machine and get a token out to play the video games, the arcade games. That token represented your value inside the Aladdin's Castle arcade ecosystem, right? Well, in our economy, in our traditional economy, we have US dollars. Let's just pretend you and I have a dollar bill each, and we trade dollar bills, the physical, tangible dollar bill. Well, they're twins. They're identical. They are fungible. When we traded them, their characteristics and traits did not change, nor did their value. But a non-fungible token, even if you and I were in Aladdin's castle and we traded Aladdin tokens, it would still be a quarter that we could put in any of the arcade games. A non-fungible token is a unique, no other token is like it. It has certain rarity features or characteristics that represents ownership, much like, and again, let's just borrow from real estate. When I got into crypto, I understood crypto because I understood real estate language, and Robert Kiyosaki helped me with those categories of bridges at first when I first got into investing. And now we have this language from real estate to really help us understand non-fungible tokens. So you own a home, I own a home. If we want to find the deed, the property deed that reflects or symbolizes our ownership to the local government, we can go to the county courthouse, or we maybe have a paper copy in our home or whatever. But that represents, it's a token of our ownership, the asset that we have control over and that we manage. Well, there's this technology called smart contracts that emerged. And the smart contract, long story short, is an algorithm or a software brain that not only identifies unique ownership of an asset, but it also governs and maintains the distribution of its benefits to the owner. So we didn't have language for this, and it's still hard to even talk about NFTs and smart contracts. But if we're talking about NFTs, we've got to talk about smart contracts. But the reason why it's such a goofy, weird conversation right now is because we had to create mutant apes and zombie pictures to trade first as art. Like art was the medium of choice by the industry of creators, so that you and I would talk about bored apes in a yacht club first. And then once you dig underneath it and go, wait a second, if I own this NFT picture, of a moonbird or whatever your NFT is, the people who own those NFTs, depending on the NFT, might have particular privileges as owners, or they might even get distributions of financial gain. I know there's one particular NFT project. I'll butcher the name. It's not the Bored Ape Yacht Club. It's another one that involved an ape or a gorilla image. And they, every day or every week, those NFTs, because of the smart contract technology underneath, they create bananas or the currency of that NFT project. And those bananas have a US dollar equivalent. So these owners technically had a money-making machine, and they could take the bananas and harvest them digitally into their wallets every day, go to a central exchange or a decentralized exchange and trade them for fiat dollars and go home with, put money in their bank account, or keep as many bananas as they want because they have accretive value and they go up because of Murphy's Law of Adoption. And so NFTs ultimately are tokens of ownership. And they just started out as goofy art stuff, but we're moving into the more sophisticated industries and sectors like real estate, for example. And let's say you and I own an office building in Tampa, Florida, and the office building is worth $10 million on appraisal. But you and I are like, we don't want to play ball with the traditional banking system, but we want to create liquidity from our equity. Maybe we have $10 million of equity, we own it outright, right? Well, you and I could make a decision. Okay, there's 10 floors to our office building, effectively $1 million a floor of value. Let's sell the top 5 floors for $1 million each, but each one of those floors will have its own NFT, and the owner will be awarded the NFT, but the NFT simply allows us on a smart contract, on a digital blockchain, to tokenize this building so that you and I own the whatever 5 floors we want to keep, and we can monetize or make liquid the other 5 floors, take $5 million of liquidity, still own $5 million of equity, and have 5 other owners who each own 1 NFT each, representing their $1 million stake in the building. And they obviously paid us $1 million in US dollar to earn that NFT. So there's a massive, and that's just a primitive example or illustration of what our future holds, in my opinion.
Right. So for agents that, are seeing like, okay, I need to really kind of be proactive and really kind of understand this, where are some places that they can go to kind of start getting that education on things?
Yeah, well, so I think there's two layers of education they need to be thinking about. There's the personal finance side, like all your agents, they're also just humans who are making a living and trying to build wealth for themselves, right? So I think on a personal finance level, they need to be learning everything they can about the accretive and historical performance of, say, Bitcoin and Ethereum and other cryptos that are emerging. And then they need to understand how blockchain technology and smart contracts are going to invade their industry, and it already is, and the metaverse as well. We are about to be in this. I predict in the next 5 to 10 years, the role of the residential real estate agent, and even the commercial agent for that matter, is going to drastically evolve, and there will be a revolution in terms of the modality of how a real estate agent actually executes and performs their duties. How they learn more, pay attention to the right people. Some of the influencers that are on a macro level from a Bitcoin standpoint, I'll name a few names to follow on Twitter and YouTube. Some of the most fanatical Bitcoin maximalists who are enthusiastic and entertaining, sometimes controversial, are people like Max Kaiser, Michael Saylor, Raoul Paul, who's a former Goldman Sachs analyst. Michael Saylor is the CEO and massive Bitcoin CEO of MicroStrategy. And folks like that are really important to follow on a macro news level and just like understanding the movement and kind of where it is. And then there's, enthusiasts like myself who have email lists and newsletters that you can join and learn more about. So I think just paying attention right now to people who are actually involved in the space. You can find specialists even on the various disciplines and categories of crypto.
Right. You brought up the the metaverse a little while ago,
yeah.
And I think that is something that I think it can be very hard for people to wrap their head around that. What really is it? So if you could kind of define what the metaverse is, could you do that for us?
So I grew up in the 80s, and I was a part of the Nintendo Entertainment System generation. And I played Mario Brothers, and I played The Legend of Zelda growing up. And if you can travel there with me, even if you're not a video game person, imagine being able to own, in the Legend of Zelda video game, own parts of the land digitally that the main character runs around in, or literally sell swords, magic swords and potions and bows and arrows and stuff like that. Video games are a great place to start in understanding the metaverse, because really the metaverse is a term that it's a reality that we've had for decades. Ever since the advent of video games, we've had metaverses, which are just contained hamlets or ecosystems digitally that have their own economies of scale, interactions, or lack thereof. And now what's happening is there's a lot of the blockchain side of things is giving crypto specific projects and that want to create their own ecosystems. I'll give you a couple of examples that are like actually happening right now as we speak. My kids play Roblox and Minecraft, for example. Those are technically their own metaverses. They're simply not built on blockchains. They're built on their independent codes and platforms, but they have their own economies. And it always kind of drove me crazy that my kids wanted to spend $9 on a character skin in Minecraft or Roblox, because it was just basically going straight into Roblox coffers and there's no, tangible return. Well, now there's an entire industry called play to earn crypto games that are emerging where you can literally earn actual cryptocurrency that has US dollar value. There's one called the Sandbox that's emerging. It's kind of like the crypto version of Minecraft. It's got massive brands, massive celebrities that are involved with it, from Snoop Dogg to Adidas to Care Bears to Pokemon to Atari to all the major central crypto exchanges. There's another one. The first one that launched actually was in 2018 called Decentraland. And now some of the largest banks in the world, Fidelity Investments, they manage $10 trillion of assets under management. They have a bank or a mansion in Decentraland. Chase, Jamie Dimon, they have a bank in Decentraland or a lounge that you can interact with. So there's this world that's evolving, and a lot of it's simply because these big brands or institutional money, they know that this emerging metaverse world, and it's not always going to be games either, but for the most part, games, much like art, are going to give us language and adoption capabilities to understand what metaverse can actually be. But it's really a bunch of different metaverses. And then unless you're able to put us into the book Ready Player One, or for those of you who've seen that movie, that's where the entire metaverse is one big universe instead of a bunch of little ones like we have right now that are emerging. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. And for anybody that maybe hasn't seen that, I kind of I think of, Wreck-It Ralph, right?
Yes. Yes.
In Wreck-It Ralph 2, he goes into that world and you have the Google over there, the other game, almost like that.
Great illustration. 100%.
Yeah. So, when it comes to as an agent, because I was talking to a guy maybe 2 months ago, and he said he really needed to, his next thing to really kind of grasp onto was being, that to sell metaverse land and real estate in metaverse. So how do you even kind of get into that?
Well, I love the metaverse real estate angle. I am a metaverse real estate investor myself. And the best way to get into it is to find some games that are launching that have a roadmap in the next 6 to 12 months of public launch. I'm a landowner in the Sandbox. I bought my land last August, so about 7 months ago, maybe 8 now. And I own land in other obscure games that no one knows about yet. And the way you find them, to give everybody kind of a quick pro tip, is the metaverse idea is simply a collection of NFTs or properties inside of a platform or a closed ecosystem. So a lot of the characters and the items that the characters of the worlds or the lands, depending on which game you're in, they're NFTizing everything so that you can own these properties. Literally, if there's a tree in the metaverse, in some games, you can own this tree. It's benign, inanimate object that just happens to be in somebody's, metaverse. You can own it, and it has a value. And so you can trade it, and you can sell it, and you can flip it, and it's weird. But in the same way that we flip real estate in the real world, or we rent it out, you can do the same thing with your NFTs in the metaverse. So pro tip, go to any of the central marketplaces for NFTs. Okay. So OpenSea.io is the largest one. It's built on the Ethereum and Polygon networks. There's another one on the Avalanche network called nftrades.com, I think. There's a lot of them. Every layer one or primary network of crypto, like Solana, Ethereum, Avalanche, Polygon, and learn what layer ones are. I'll let everyone Google that one. But once you figure out the central NFT marketplaces that are popular and have a lot of volume, go there, and they have categories that you can sort NFTs by. Sort by virtual worlds or metaverses, and you'll find the popular top 25 popular virtual worlds that have liquidity and trading volume happening. And you can go in there and find deals or barter or bid on auction. And then from there, actually, you can connect through the official links. Don't be careful, connecting, because there are scams out there. So make sure you're always following the official, like, blue check mark links. You can connect to the Discord group or the Telegram groups of these projects. And each of those legit groups and projects will have their own private marketplace, peer-to-peer marketplaces that kind of manifest as channels inside the Discord groups. And sometimes you can get deals there. Long story short, you're basically, when you're buying metaverse real estate, you're buying an NFT. And so it's your job to simply vet and qualify and make an assessment on the roadmap of that particular game or virtual world, and then buy some land the same way you would buy some land on the outskirts of town, and the city sprawl catches up with it eventually 20 or 30 years later. Except you're doing the same thing digitally, except it's not going to take 20 or 30 years for the growth of the project to catch up.
Right. And just kind of wrapping up, I think this, when it comes to real estate agents, one of the biggest things we always talk about is having that passive income. And this is really where that kind of comes in.
Yeah. One fantastic aspect of the metaverse is, like, for example, in the sandbox game that I mentioned, I'll be able to rent out my land parcel to someone else. And it's an open world. So, like, I imagine 16-year-old kids who are really good and tech savvy, who are great designers, downloading for free the Sandbox Game Designer Studio, which they give you for free. And you can literally build whatever you can come up with. You can make up NFTs and sell them. I imagine that I'll be able to rent my land out to someone way more savvy than myself, and they have their own business in the metaverse where they make other people NFTs using the software that the game gives them for free. And it'll just be this, like, meta business in landlord relationship. And it's all facilitated through the smart contract of the gaming ecosystem or metaverse. So there's no, like, check collections or knocking on doors. It just happens algorithmically because of wallets being connected to the NFTs. And it's an awesome utility that we're all going to benefit from.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. This is it's one of those things. It's always interesting to have conversations like this that, you kind of look back in a few years and you're like, oh man, like, this was, now we're really in it. And so it's definitely, it is a very interesting topic. And I know for a lot of people it can be very overwhelming.
Totally.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Yeah, man. My pleasure.
I really want to thank Josh for taking the time to speak with us today. As already seen earlier this year, crypto and NFTs are already part of the real estate industry. And as an agent, it is imperative to stay up to date on the ever-evolving financial landscape. So once again, if you think you or someone else on your team has an awesome story or tip to share with our community, send us a message at feedback@smartagents.com. Well, that wraps things up for this episode, but remember, follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts and make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents YouTube channel. Again, I'm Michael Walter, and we'll see you on the next episode.